When you give somebody else feedback, before you do it, you should think a minute if you have permission to be giving them feedback. Last week, I was walking PAX. We were walking down the street, and there's this tree a couple of blocks down. And around this tree is a patch of wood chips that she absolutely loves. And of course, the wood chips are surrounded by a little fence, but it's no trouble for her to hop over that fence. And she loves to go into this area of wood chips, and she loves to pee on the wood chips. Well, I looked down the street as she was peeing in the wood chips, and I noticed an old lady approaching me. And I thought to myself, oh no, I'm going to hear about this. And sure enough, as she got closer to me, she said to me, "She shouldn't be in there. You need to get her out of those wood chips." She said this politely enough to me. It was a calm, soft voice, but she didn't really have permission to me telling me this. Now, of course, in social situations, you don't really need permission, at least evolutionary speaking. We didn't necessarily need permission to try and correct other people's behavior. But the reality of it, regardless of whether or not my dog should be peeing on wood chips around a tree, the reality is because she didn't have permission from me to be giving me that feedback, I was very likely to get upset about it. So when you give people feedback and you don't have their permission to be giving it, you should know that it's very likely, if that's negative feedback, especially correcting behaviors, that things can blow up on you. So you shouldn't be surprised then, and you should be very cognizant of the fact that you'll have to work very hard to make sure that the conversation and the feedback you give doesn't slip into an argument that then slips into perhaps yelling at each other, and hopefully doesn't continue thereafter to slip into something even worse. Because the very nature of giving somebody feedback without implicit permission and hopefully explicit permission is that you've set up a psychological conundrum. When somebody reaches out for help, they're making themselves vulnerable. They're putting themselves down in a way to allow themselves to be helped by you, to be pulled up by you. However, if somebody hasn't given you permission and you try to help them, which feedback is trying to help somebody, you are putting them down when they weren't aware that they're going to be made vulnerable. When somebody asks for help, they're aware that they're going to become vulnerable to ask for the help. However, when you don't have their permission, they're unaware that they're going to be made vulnerable. And being made vulnerable is a very defensive position. So it shouldn't be surprising then when someone's put in a defensive position, they may not react so positively to it. And thus it's a good idea to have permission before you try and give somebody feedback to help them. And if you don't have that permission, you should be aware that things could go south, and you should make sure you are in an emotional state to be able to comfortably control your own emotional response. Otherwise, things can blow up.